Welcome to another episode of the ENYTING Gender podcast. I am your host, Sharmin Prince, and with me today, I have a guest, Linda Banja, and it's an honor and a privilege to have Linda here today. Ms. Banja is a distinguished lawyer, a social entrepreneur, global mentor, and facilitator with a deep-seated passion for gender and inclusion, business and human rights, as well as gender and international development. As a fervent advocate for sexual and reproductive health and rights, and an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, her legal expertise spans over 13 years in a diverse array of economic sectors. At the helm of Banja and Company Advocates, Linda serves as the managing partner and brings a wealth of legal knowledge to her role. Holding a Bachelor's of Law with honors from Moi University, a postgraduate diploma in law from Kenya School of Law, and being a member of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, Linda's credentials are further enhanced by her accreditation as a mediator through Strathmore Law School. Currently, she is broadening her already extensive expertise by pursuing a Master's of Law at the University of Nairobi. Beyond her legal practice, Linda Banja is deeply involved in advocacy and leadership roles. She serves as the vice chair for the Business of Human Rights Committee at the East Africa Law Society, is actively engaged with the Federation of Women Lawyers in Kenya, FIDA, and is a contributing committee member of the Every Woman's Treaty Global Coalition Working Group. Her contribution to empowering future leaders and advancing human rights do not end there. Ms. Banja is a teaching human rights fellow, an African Changemaker Fellow for the year 2020, an ambassador for the World Literacy Foundation, and a World Pulse ambassador and changemaker. She is also an alumna of Sherry Blair Foundation for Women, where she champions the cause of education, sexual, reproductive, and health rights, gender-based violence, and social justice, with a special focus on improving the lives of girls and women. Please join me as we welcome the multifaceted and accomplished Linda Banja to our program, where we will delve into the crucial topics of gender-based violence and gender policies through the perspectives of regional and international instruments. Linda, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. How are you doing? And would you like to add anything on who you are to this extensive bio?
Thanks, Sharmin. That's quite a a load. I think for me, I love just being called Banja. I don't think I'd want to add any more of that. Those are normally what I said. Opportunities that grace had allowed us to encounter, and we took advantage of them. So, for me, it's I call it more of grace. But thank you for having me as well.
Okay. So I'm just going to get into my questions, and thank you for forcing me to explore an aspect of gender policies that I would have never ventured into. Could you provide a brief overview of your work and describe what drives your passion in the area of gender and inclusion.
Okay, thank you very much. I think when the first thing when somebody talks about gender is you think about male and female and all that. But gender is just who you are. It's your sexuality. It's what encompasses you as a person at the end of the day overall. What are these things that drive you? What are these things that when you sit back and look in terms of your structure and who you are as a person, they're the things that inform the decisions you make. Um, I look at Banja as a woman, first of all, because there's a girl somewhere in rural where I come from, Homa Bay, who's thinking, will I really ever get the opportunity of going to school? I'm having periods, will I be able to get pads? And if I'm not getting pads, what is the contingency plan? How am I going to handle this situation? So your sexuality informs a lot of on what decisions you make as a person. So why did I pick my focus on gender? I think being a legal practitioner, first of all, when I started my practice of law, I had the grace of walking into courtrooms and being in spaces where people uh, were expressing their situations, what scenarios they had gone through, and some of them were quite mind-boggling. Why you'd ask me? Some people at that time there wasn't that much privacy in terms of expressing what has happened to you in a rape situation. So for me, one particular scenario really struck me. There's a lady who'd walked into she was around 10 years old and she had been raped. Uh, her her mother had sent her to buy something from the shop. So when she came back, when she went to the shop, the person who was across the counter, because she'd gone to the butchery, um, asked her to come and walk on the other side. So when she walked into the other side, the person raped her. But you know, in the rural setting, they do not understand the aspect of rape. For them, she knew that something wrong had happened, but she could not describe that. So being somebody who was 10, she had, I think she had just started her periods. So within a few months, the parents started seeing there's a change because her tummy started growing big. So with time, she actually saw this girl is pregnant. So she took her to the hospital and then now asking her, okay, what happened? So then she said, I went to the butcher and the butcher did this. And when they confronted the man, he said, but I paid her 20 shillings. And, but initially she had not understood what happened. Um, when I saw the look on her face, for me it was painful because she totally did not have understanding of what had happened to her. Totally could not correlate even the aspect because you could see even though she's holding the child, she has no exposure, she has no experience. And for me, it really pained me because that means in that rural setting, there's a mother who assumes this girl is a girl and she's supposed to know. And in law, we say we do not assume things. We don't live in suppositions. You have to be very clear and very succinctly clear on whatever you're expressing. So I lived with the expression with that there's something I can do. There's something I can, being somebody who's gone to school and who's got into different spaces where people do express themselves, there's a difference I can be able to make. And that's what struck me and drove me into being a change agent within the sexual reproductive health segment. So how did I start that? When I came back to Nairobi, because the case was outside Nairobi, I had been volunteering in different spaces. But now, in terms of the volunteering that I was doing, it was more on a mentorship aspect, more on an education aspect. But now it meant I had to be intentional about being a voice change agent for sexual reproductive rights, because there are things that we assume, and I'm emphasizing again, we assume that people know, and it is not automatic. It is not, that's not the case. So I joined a group called Akili Dada in Nairobi, where they do a lot of mentorship for young women and girls in schools. And that's when I understood that there are actually scenarios where people um, are exposed to environments, to scenarios where they do not have that conversation with their parents, particularly their mothers. For those who are mothers or whoever they are, in terms of guardians, whether it's an aunt or whoever, they do not have that space of actively expressing and just opening up and saying, hey, this is what's happening to me. And this is, yeah. So with that, I got more intentional and even went more to the ground, because I'm a very networked person. So every space I would go to, I would try and voice out that. We got to a scenario again when we got into the post-election violence in Kenya. And people still who did not realize that the act of sexual violence is there. And I got an opportunity through FIDA Kenya to give a short presentation using my vernacular language on informing women and girls that actually sexual violence is not the norm. It's not right for you to be raped. And what are the steps are you supposed to take when you are actually violated sexually, in terms of safeguarding the evidence, in terms of not washing yourself, in terms of just handling, reporting the matter to the police, going to the hospital, taking enough precaution in terms of exposure to sexual diseases. So yeah, so that's basically, I think, a prenup, if I'd call that, a prelude to my entry to gender-based rights. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for that response. And I wanted to ask, but you are kind of alluded to it, what has been done since, because you give such a impact, you told such an impactful story that promoted or was the driving force of your passion. And my question is, what has been done to ensure that another 10-year-old victim does not show up in court with a baby? Um, are there programs in the rural area that is providing education, information, interventions? I know you said you're doing it, so you alluded to it, but can you expand what has been done thus far?
In Kenya, there's a gender response unit that's been just intentionally created because we had a sexual offences act that was enacted and passed to be part of Kenyan law, and there's just a specific gender response unit that's it particularly deals with that. But I think if I was to add another additional thing that Kenya has done is to have promoting the inclusion of men as equal partners within the campaign of trying to reduce and eradicate the issues of having gender-based violence, especially particularly on girls as minors, because you cannot uh, uh, attempt to provide solution to a problem without, and part of the problem is the other gender. So I think that the inclusion of men as equal partners to providing the solution of dealing with the aspect of gender-based violence has been the key thing that has helped in the reduction and reducing eradication of gender-based violence against women in terms of Kenya. I think it's something that it's also on the international front. And I think that's something that a lot of organizations have embraced, because it's not something that is done by just a particular individual. It's something that's been embraced by different not-for-profit entities within Kenya.
Thank you for
As part of the
raising the topic of male allyship, because that's one of my questions. But since you've raised it, how easy or how difficult it is to invite men to become male allies in gender-based violence, and even being included at the table to discuss women and the violations against women.
I think the biggest aspect I think which we appreciate is the Kenyan society is a patriarchal society, which means men are a bit apprehensive in terms of including aspects of women. They approach this topic of women with a lot of caution, because there's an aspect of just having women as I think there's a particular word they use. They have women oriented careers that or notions that women are just supposed to be relegated to the kitchen, and those just filial roles. So yes, there's the aspect of patriarchy, which is, again, you'll appreciate that Kenya is not just one community. We are more than 43 different communities. So each one of them has their own different cultures, values, beliefs, systems that they ascribe to. So within this, I think the the biggest thing that rallies behind all of them is the aspect, more than 50% is the patriarchal bit, which a lot of Kenyans have been trying to fight against by trying to ensure that in promoting that aspect of raising your children, both men and female, as equal partners. And I think you've seen I'll assume you've seen the gender gap video that's going around about the girl, promoting of girls, and just including them as equals, as partners, as key stakeholders within each and every aspect of life. That's the biggest aspect. That is something that is not going to phase out immediately. It's something that is ongoing, and it's slowly working, because I'm saying slowly because we cannot phase out the older generation, because they are the ones who are predominantly have belief in that. But the younger generation, yes, there's more inclusivity of the other gender. And for me, I think there'll be a new phase that will be happening with the new generation. I'm praying that we'll be seeing the phasing out of the patriarchal aspect. But to the older generation, I think also with the law, I'd say with the lawmakers that we've had, I'll use a particular lady. She comes from the Maasai community. She has worked very hard to try and voice out the rights of women and girls within her community, because like the Maasai community, they've relegated women to just filial roles. And she came up with programs that focused more on empowering the right of the girls, protecting the sexual aspect of the girl child, because normally the Maasai, for instance, if Sharmin, for instance, was in Maasai land today, there'd just be some Maasai Moran who will come and put a spear on the door. He'll meet you and he'll take you into his house. And once a spear is on his door, they'll know. So any other Moran who pass there, they'll know that there's a lady. This guy has a lady inside here, so you do not mess in here. And that aspect has actually been, I think it's being phased out by and large, because within her community she has been a key change agent in terms of that aspect of sexual reproductive rights. So yes, it calls for legislation, not just the law itself, but the lawmakers being intentional about going out and emphasizing, educating the community, carrying out advocacy programs where they're telling the community, these are the benefits, this is a danger of you going through this, and this is what happens when this person goes through this. And I think she has really worked hard to do that. Secondly, there's an aspect of capacity building in terms of going to grassroots organizations, partnerships that are forged within the different communities. In Kenya, I'd give you an example. In January, we've had a high rate of something called femicide that has been happening to us. So I'd say us because it has just been on the female front. But one thing I am clapping for us about is we were able to rally most of the community-based organizations, the policymakers, the lawmakers, the leaders within the community, the social welfare organizations were able to rally and moved a real force to voice out that this thing is happening. And I'm happy to say that we are in March, and at least the numbers have reduced substantially, because it was just something, I think, I don't know that to call it social ill or something, but it just came off a whole force, which couldn't make sense. But yes, at least I'd say there's a communal gathering between all stakeholders, all people who are engaged within this to try and deal with aspects of gender-based violence in terms of that.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that. In Kenya, there you said 43 communities, right?
Yes.
I didn't know that. And as you're speaking and you give us such an excellent example of the Maasai with 43 different communities, you're talking about 43 different cultural norms, stereotypes, mores, biases, all of that. And as an advocate, what strategies or techniques is helping both the government and the grassroots or non-governmental organizations to identify gatekeepers to enter those community to provide support, interventions, and education?
I think for me, thanks for that question. I think the key thing for me has been partnership, intentional partnership, because I gave the example of the femicide that we had recently. And aside from the hotlines that we have on gender-based violence, we have specialized gender-based units within the police force, for instance, where if you're a woman, there's a unit that's just a woman that you'll be going to report to. and then that person will guide you on how to go through it, and how you get to the process of reporting, escalating it to the police, going to the medical, and how it even reaches to court, and even having follow-ups. Also, we've had interventions in terms of partnerships with in terms of trainings at the grassroots levels. I think from the grassroots to the national level, there have been organizations that have been also intentional about training and doing advocacy on the aspect of gender rights, gender-based rights, and gender-based violence, which have really helped, because we will not be able to know if there's a femicide in Embu, and me being in Nairobi, then that will not be able to. But those clear communication lines that are being there, the partnership that are being there, have really helped that. Then there's the amplification of the different aspects of violations that are taking place, and how to wiggle around them. I think that has really played a key role, because, for instance, there's a time there was an amplification of the aspect that there was an increase, a steep rise in the in terms of gonorrhea and those sexual reproductive rights illnesses that are being there, and how they were supposed to be handled, and the message was being voiced by the media, by all stakeholders, and I think reaching to different levels. And that's how we've been able to counter and realize this is what is happening. These are the symptoms. These are the numbers, and this is what more do we need to do as the different stakeholders to be able to curtail the numbers from rising, on, or different approaches that we need to do to address this issue.
Thank you so much for that response. So I want to switch gears a little so that we can talk about the impact of international conventions, if that's okay with you.
Yes, please.
How have international conventions, such as the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, shaped the legal and societal framework dealing with GBV in Kenya?
Thanks for that. I'll use the different instruments that we are all signatory to. I'll start with CEDO, with which we are all knowledgeable about. I think, Sharmin, if I'd use an example, wherever you are today, whether it's in the US or UK, you'd love to have a scenario where if somebody attacks you sexually, you do not have to go back to Trinidad, Tobago, for you to be able to secure your rights. No, that's the importance of having the international instruments. That wherever you are, whether you're in Homa Bay, where I come from, whether you're in Sudan, whether you're in Mali, or wherever it is in the world, you're able to have your rights safeguarded, protected, and you know what steps you're not supposed to take. For instance, I'm saying this because internationally, I believe almost all countries have almost the same reporting mechanism in terms of when there's been a sexual violation that's been you faced an attack. This is the best reporting mechanism: reporting to the hospital, to the police, and escalating to all those processes. I'm happy to say that's something that's almost universal, and that's the basis of and the importance that the international instruments have assisted not only Kenya, but also globally, to protect and secure the rights of girls and women in terms of their rights on gender-based violence. Secondly, an attack on your sexuality, attack on your gender is not a personal thing, because I am in Kenya today and you're wherever you are in the world. But if we have an instrument, if you have a policy document, if you have a law that's global, that ensures that wherever you are, you're safe. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't mean that you have to run to your country for you to be secure. That uniformity in law, for me, has worked to safeguard to ensure that in whatever angle you perceive or whatever you face, then you have a uniform kind of way of addressing those issues. Yes, we still have challenges in terms of there are some countries that have reservation in terms of those instruments being signed because we have different perception in terms of our values, our cultures, our traditions. What am I talking about? There's aspect of, for instance, abortion. There's the abortion that happens because of your life. It's either you save the mother's life or you save the child's life, or both. You can lose both. So you, at some point, you'd have to take something that is a lesser evil. Or you have the debate on this person has been raped and they're having a child by this person who has raped them. So how do we address this issue of the child that this person is going to give birth to? Because I've sat in scenarios where somebody has had to have a child by somebody who raped them. And from that experience, a person actually just tells you, I hate this child. But it's not their wish to hate that child. It is, this child was not a product of love. This child was a product of a violation that was done against them. So how do you address that aspect, quote unquote? Because at the end of the day, that child that is born is a human being. And at the end of the day, their rights have to be respected. Their rights have to be safeguarded. So is it a right for that child to be killed at the point the mother realizes that they're pregnant by this act of this violation that they're having? Those are the things that, whether you're in Kenya, whether you're wherever you are in the world, the the international instruments come in, kick in, and you have to look at what is a lesser evil, but what are these things that will be addressing in terms of the rights of the mother, because the mother has a right to a child that she wants, but at the end of the day, again, that child is a person at the moment of conception. So those are the things that the international instruments kick in to address, to safeguard. There's the aspect of also the victim, the mother being a victim, the woman being a victim, the girl child being a victim in terms of the violation they've been exposed to. Are we having regulations? Are we having laws? Are we having instruments that look at the rights of that woman, the rights of that girl, against the perpetrator? Because the law also is not in a vacuum. Sometimes people say that the woman or the girl is the person who's responsible for the act that was meted out on them, but it's not, because regardless of whatever the scenario is, that person is a human being. That woman, that girl is a human being and has to be respected. Their rights have to be respected. Their right of choice, the right of life, their sexuality has to be respected. So yes, there's aspect of also their sexual reproductive health rights that has to be considered. When somebody is sexually abused, there's exposure of you getting exposure to HIV. So why would you, and you're basically giving, I'm not saying having HIV is a death sentence, but ultimately it is, because you've locked in this person to a certain extent. So the law, these illegal instruments kick in to also safeguard these women, these young girls, from exposure to such violations, such the infringement of their health rights. And I also work to deter, because also there are people who know very well that they are sick and they go sexually abusing people, abusing children, using the excuse of, for instance, in Kenya and other African countries, that when you sleep with a virgin or when you sleep with a girl who's not sexually exposed, then you get healing, which are just rudimentary ways of thinking and looking at things. So yes, that those are my tidbits of the things that the instruments and the law looks at.
Thank you so much. And you've answered my 2 follow-up questions about the role that instruments play. So thank you for that. And thank you for being so thorough. As a member of global coalitions like Every Woman's Treaty, how do you engage with these international platforms to influence GBV and gender policy?
I'd say, for instance, say Every Woman's Treaty is a coalition of organizations in more than 100 countries. So imagine the impact that has. So for me, I think the partnership, the intentional partnerships that have been made with the different in different countries, in different stakeholders, because even right now, we are working, the coalition is working towards having an optional protocol to CEDO. Why? The world has gone global. It's on a, like right now, I'm not where you are, but we're able to communicate. So there's there's the embracing of technology, and it has also come with another form of violence. So in Kenya right now, we're also dealing with technology-backed gender-based violence. So those are the things that the Every Woman's Treaty and the Global Coalition is looking at, because there's the different aspects, the different angles that the violence is taking. So you cannot still remain with the CEDO that was there in 1972, and you're in 2025. So definitely there'll have to be things that have to be looked at within the CEDO law as itself, and having the instrument itself as it is. You cannot roll out aspects also like climate change that also have an impact, by and large, on the sexuality of women in terms of menstrual cycles and all that. The partnerships that have been made have been intentional at looking at reproductive health, in terms of looking at reporting mechanisms, in terms of looking at the different data that's coming up, because the data that was there in the past just looked at, okay, there've been rapes, there've been this and has happened. How are we addressing the aspects of the reporting mechanisms? Are there things that we need to review to ensure that the approach in looking at how different angles that the violence is taking is addressed? I think for me that's a key thing that has been there. Then number two, it's the coalition. The coalition is looking at partnerships. How many stakeholders are we addressing to be able to have that unifying element? Do we engage just with the diplomatic areas? How can we reach the different governments? Because once something is passed from the top, from the governance structures of different countries, then the impact of that to the lower level, to the grassroots, is very simple. Because the government has an impact of having different structures within the country itself. And so that will have more reach, more impact, more access, more engagement also as well, in terms of different aspects. So, and the focus, you may also appreciate on the Every Woman's Treaty is on the gender-based violence aspect. So how are we able to reach from the government, how are we able to trickle down to, for instance, in Kenya, we have the county and the chiefs and all that. How are we able to address the different issues of gender-based violence, not just from New York reporting and you're saying this is what's happening, but if you're able to have impact, if Linda Banja can maybe go to the office of the gender advisor to the president and say this is what's happening. This is I'm a member of the global coalition on the Every Woman's Treaty, and this is what's happening. And we wanted to have a different approach, and you are more of a stakeholder more than we are, and we could forge partnership. We give you our lay down approach. This is what we are looking at. This is what we want to voice out. And your role as a stakeholder in this is in amplifying this is 1, 2, 3. Then that has, for me, it has played a key role in voicing out the issue of gender-based, on addressing the issues of gender-based violence. Secondly, the training on the fellowships that's done has been pivotal in educating us, not only that on the physical aspect. It has gone to because when I'm able to do an conference where I'm a member, I can be able to the issue of gender-based violence, no, without necessarily walking in or holding a baraza somewhere or holding a meeting somewhere. That penning out of an article, giving my opinion, sharing my insights, and giving a global perspective on what's happening in terms of the gender-based violence space plays also a key role in partnering with the coalition as a stakeholder, as a member of the coalition, in reducing and addressing issues of gender-based violence. Thirdly, I'm working on the things that we have been addressed. So there's an international training. There's also the partnerships within ourselves as members or within the coalition space. The biggest voice of change is the media, whether it's the mainstream media or the social media. How are we able to use these platforms to voice out these issues of gender-based violence? Because you find if I'm to report something on gender-based violence today, I'll first go to my local media station, the local radio station, the local TV station, before I come back to Twitter and Facebook and TikTok and all that. So how are we using, constructively using the various media channels that we have to be able to share out, to be able to voice out, and also advise people on their role as stakeholders within the gender-based violence space and gender rights space.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your brilliant responses. And they're covering, it's like I sent you my questions because you're answering 2 questions, sometimes 3 in one. So thank you for doing that. How can civil society, advocacy groups, grassroots organization best leverage regional and international instruments to advance the cause of gender equity and combat GBV?
Okay, thanks for the question. I believe, I'm a firm believer that I cannot address something that I do not understand. So first of all, we need to appreciate the contents of those international instruments. What is the content? And how does it relate to where I am? And how does it relate to the wider international space? So first of all, we need to be armed with the instruments themselves. Once I have the instrument with me, then I know this is the content of this particular instrument. And how does it relate to me? There's rape, there's incest, there is femicide, there is assault, there's, all those aspects of gender-based violence, all the forms that it takes up. So once you're able to understand those aspects, the different facets that it takes up, and how the law intertwines and gels in that, then you'll be able to appreciate the document. Otherwise, if I just come and tell you, the CEDO, you'll be like, oh, okay, I have heard about it. But once you have it with you, understand the contents, correlate it with your situation on the ground, then you'll be able to appreciate the contents. Secondly, be intentional about having partnerships. And not just partnerships for the sake of partnerships in terms of thematic partnerships. We're talking about gender-based violence. We're talking about sexual reproductive health rights. So you have to be also forging partnerships within those particular spaces, so that even when I know there's something wrong, I know I can call Sharmin and she'll address this aspect of gender-based violence in this front, and that's sorted out. So once you have those partnerships, you know who you can give a call, who you can send an email to, who you can walk to, and do all of that. I'm saying that because, for instance, I am the co-lead for the Africa Women Leadership Network on sexual reproductive health rights. So we had a meeting yesterday, and there were different aspects and different facets that are being addressed. But all of us were able to combine and share space and give different opinions and all that. Because why? We are speaking one language, it's GBV. We're speaking one language, it's sexual reproductive health rights. So having that network, having that space, yes. Then what are the tools that you can utilize within this particular space? First of all, what media partnerships can you make? What communication and media tools can you be able to use? You have the social media. You have, I'll use the example that I use. Within the GBV space, almost every month, there's something within the GBV space that's being celebrated. Last month, we had the aspect on FGM being addressed. In the month of March, we had the International Women's Day. And the other month will be the International Day of the African Girl Child. So every one of these months, you have something that's being addressed. So how are you looking at these things, and not just using the thematic area, the thematic aspect that's running particular for that month? How can you also come up with so yeah, there are those tools that you be able to look at and find what am I picking up to be able to be on the same page with my other colleague within the international front. So I had started with the communication. What are the communication tools that you're using? Are you using your social media, and what is this that you're looking to address? Are you addressing issues of gender-based violence? For instance, in general, we're looking at femicide. We used a lot of TikTok. We use a lot of Twitter. There's a lot of voicing of this aspect on Facebook. So social media played a key role in voicing out the numbers, in reporting, in collecting data, in using the different approaches to address it. So then there's the aspect of the partnerships that you have, the people, the stakeholders that you know. How have you forged relationships, partnerships, people within the church, within the women groups, within the schools, within the market space, within the business environment, within the forums of higher learning? Have you been able to basically come up with initiatives that are strategic partnerships? I call them strategic partnerships that are very, very intentional on, I'm here and this is what I'm doing and this is where we are and this is, I think when you're on the pulpit, and I think you need to highlight that there are more girls that are disappearing, then people are on the alert that, hey, there are girls who are being raped and their body parts are being traded for something. There's child trafficking that's going on. So those are key partnerships. The other aspects are meetings. Are we having more meetings? And right now, I'm happy to say I do not have to come to New York for us to hold an international conference on gender-based violence. So can we have meetings, online meetings? We have webinars. We have online conferences where we're having speakers coming in and channeling out and saying, hey, there's this thing that's happening. How can we mobilize? How can we come up with a new initiative? And I think that's the key thing also that also has amplified the optional protocol to CEDO that's ongoing with the Every Woman's Treaty. They've been able to get up numbers, they've been able to get different approaches, they've been able to voice out and even get a wider audience through these meetings, through having the fellowships that are being done, the trainings and advocacy that's being done, using the online platform. And what else?
I have
think also
one question.
Yes.
What's a universal instrument that non-governmental organizations can use to expand the GBV awareness or and collaborate? That's the question I wrote. Yeah.
I think I still go for CEDO. In terms of gender-based violence, the go-to document is CEDO. But now I think for me, I'd rally more support for the Every Woman's Treaty optional to CEDO, because it works more towards, it aligns more on giving options to embracing the new technological changes, the new environment, the new workspace, the new forms of gender-based violence that's taking place. Because we also remember there's online gender-based violence, there's bullying, there's cyberbullying that's taking place, and that's a form of gender-based violence. There is there's a child trafficking that's taking place, and people are using phones. They're using YouTube to say, hey, they're using Facebook, they're using Twitter to attract young children, and that's how child trafficking is going on. Everything has taken a technological angle. So having that backing, for me, I'd rally more and more support of networking within the NGO space for them to rally more and more support to the Every Woman's Treaty optional to CEDO, because it will be it will be an all encompassing document in terms of the new changes that are taking place.
So let's say a NGO grassroots organization is listening to this podcast and asks, what is CEDO? Where can I access that?
Okay. First of all, CEDO is the Convention on Elimination. I'm sorry, I have a heavy tongue.
The Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women.
Yes. It's an international instrument. It's an instrument you can get online. If you just Google, it will come up, and there's a PDF version of it. You can download it, so there's nobody who will say that you're breaking any data protection laws. But otherwise, it's for instance, within your within your, if you have a social arm to your to your country, then for instance, in Kenya, every county has a gender social department. So they'd be able to share that document with you, right? But also within the Every Woman's Treaty, there's still the Every Woman's Treaty itself, as I'm saying it. They have a website, and they have the original CEDO document, and they also have the alternate, the new. They're coming up with new. They're taking up recommendations for the new optional document to CEDO. So, but there are also highlights within the CEDO document that there are specific areas. If you want to look at what is it that it is addressing in terms of the gender-based violence. If you think there are things that if you do not want, because there are people also who don't like reading this, can look at a document saying like, oh my God, this is so many pages. So there are things you can also just, for those people who do not want to read the whole document, you can just look at the preface, the prelude, and just see what is this, what do I want to look at, what do I want to address, and yeah, just take a read. Do not get scared. The language is simple, understandable. Yes, but you can also go to the other place you can go to is your diplomatic mission within your government, or within your gender ministry. Ask. Somebody had mentioned this thing to me. I would like to see it. Can I read it? Can I make a copy of it? And then also ask within be curious. I like being curious. Ask, do we have any laws within our country that is in this document? Can I see it? Because like in Kenya, we have the Sexual Offences Act. Is there a part of it within the CEDO that aspects of it are in this? Can you show me? Ask questions. Sometimes I think we fear, and I think the question that we need to ask ourselves: what will happen if I ask? Nobody can shoot you down. You only get 1 second, and you're 1 minute wiser after that.
So, in closing, what would you like to leave with our listeners?
I think for me, um, one thing I'd like us to all embrace: we should not even be talking about gender-based violence. I think in the first place, if we all lived by the golden rule, do unto others the way you'd like them to do unto you, then you would not even be addressing anything on aspect of gender-based violence. We'd love each other the way treat somebody else the way you'd love to be treated. Then we would not even be addressing this. But since it's something that we have to address, because we're all fallible by the mere fact that we're human beings. So there'll be that somebody who will not maybe be able to control themselves or take care of themselves. So in those instances, for me, look, my first prayer is let us love your neighbor as yourself. Then number two, we have to take into consideration those people who will go on the other side of the law, and that's why the law is created. Is for the young girls, for the young women, I think for me, my call and my rally is for the parents, is be there for your kids. There's no one else who will be a better friend to your kid than yourself, because there are things you are exposed to, there are things you've gone through, there are things you hear from your colleagues, from your friends, from your networks, that I think you would be the best person to safeguard them from. So be the best, the best friend, the best partner, the best person. I don't know what other word I can use to your child. Be there for your kids. Be the best advisor. Be the first person they run to when something goes wrong. then nothing will escape you, whether they are boys or girls, because nowadays even rape, young boys are being sodomized. So for me, be there for your kids. Then number 3 is let's be more intentional about forging partnerships, relationships within the gender-based violence space, because that's the only way we are able to curtail the numbers from rising, the instances from spreading, the forms from regenerating. That's the only way we are able to handle it very, very well. Because if we are able to get something is cropping up somewhere else, you're able to cut off the horns before it even stems up. Then also, it also gives you space to collect data, because once you're able to have data, then you're also able to understand, are we having impact? Are we able to monitor, and are we having impact in terms of the approaches that we are using, in terms of the laws that we are making, in terms of the different mechanisms that we are using to stop this? Are we having impact? I think that for me is the key word for that. Then finally is, on the global scale, we cannot address an issue just from my rural home in Homa Bay and say we stop it, because still there'll be another girl somewhere who is in Trinidad, in Jamaica, who's going through something, and they would like, maybe the approach in Kenya would really is congruent with the situation there. So if we're having not just international instruments, I applaud the initiatives that the international community is working on in terms of making laws and policies and all those instruments to work to address those issues. But can we be more aggressive in terms of creating spaces? Can we have even just organizations that are just dealing with girls and women issues, and have platforms like what the podcast that you're having right now? Because I'm sure there'll be somebody who will be listening somewhere. Maybe they do not have this time to sit here and listen to us, but they'll listen to it and maybe pick something and re-listen to it, because I have also that habit. And listen, there's an aspect here, I picked 1, 2, 3, maybe we can use this approach, and how can we best address this? Let's not leave it to the big shots, the big women and the presidents and leaders. The voice of change comes from me and you. Let's create spaces for young girls, young women, that businesswoman in Homa Bay, that farmer in Tanzania, in Arusha, that lady somewhere in Kampala. Let's create just spaces that people talk, because I believe being a legal person, listening, when you give time, give people spaces to talk, to open up, they'll tell you so much, and you'll get to learn that the things people go through, and it's only that they've never had the opportunity to have an audience to be listened to. And I think also with listening to people, you get different approaches from the conventional ways that we are used to addressing issues, not just the training, the advocacy. We'll talk and we'll go around, and I think that's the biggest problem. We go around the same circle with the same whatever. But once you listen to different people, you actually get to learn that there's an approach, there's a mechanism, there's a different route of addressing things. So yes, let's create more spaces, and I'm grateful for this space, Sharmin. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Banja. I still have a lot of questions, so that we may have to do this again, because you mentioned digital violence, and it's a new form of violence, and a lot of people aren't aware that what they might be experiencing digitally, it's gender-based violence. So, but I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights. Thank you for your details. Thank you for your knowledge that you have shared with us. And we thank you for being here. And we'll see you next time.